This is CNN Breaking News.
We do have some breaking news for you right now. U.S. bombers have struck ISIS camps in southern Libya overnight. These airstrikes happening in the final hours of President Obama's time in office. This is a story you'll see first on CNN. We want to get to CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr. She has all of the breaking details. What have you learned, Barbara?
Good morning, Allison. In the final hours of the Obama presidency, this may now well be the final military action personally authorized by President Obama. U.S. B-2 bombers striking in southern Libya overnight against some ISIS camps in the desert that the U.S. had been watching for several weeks. Fighters fleeing from the coastal city of Sirte, where the U.S. had bombed previously, south into the desert. This is an area the U.S. had been watching. They went to the president. The U.S. military got his authorization to do this, and those airstrikes were conducted overnight. What is so significant here is that it underscores President Obama's policy of relying on bombers, aircraft, drones, and in places like Iraq and Syria, ground forces, special operations on the ground in places like that to go after ISIS fighters and terror targets as they spread out around the world. This has been a presidency relying on special forces, relying on bomber aircraft and drones rather than large military units on the ground. They do believe this time they got to the camps, that they struck what they wanted to hit, and they will now be conducting that bomb damage assessment to see if they have to go back and restrike again. Allison?
Okay, Barbara, thank you for bringing us all of your reporting. We'll check with you throughout the program. Let's discuss this breaking news and much more with Senator Angus King. He's an independent from Maine. He's also a member of the Armed Services and the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, thanks so much for being here.
Of course, Allison.
Why would President Obama launch a strike like this in the final hours of his presidency?
I think this points up the fact that the world doesn't stop and wait for us to have an inauguration, and that it's so important to have continuity, particularly in the national security area. I can only assume that the president was informed of the availability of some important targets that could help decapitate the leadership of ISIS, and they took that opportunity. But I think that it's so important that we maintain continuity. That's why I believe on Friday afternoon, right after the inauguration, the Senate is going to take up the nominations for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and probably the head of the CIA. From
everything you've heard from President-elect Trump, are you worried about continuity of a plan with his administration?
Well, there's a sort of sub-problem. There are 690 so-called executive-level positions. So far, 29 have been appointed. That's a long way to go, and often the people on the second and third levels are the ones where a lot of the decisions have to be made. So there's continuity is a problem. One of the things I'm worried about is apparently the transition team is telling people you're done tomorrow without a replacement. And for example, in the nuclear, the so-called the nuclear system where we maintain weapons at Los Alamos, places like that, those people have been told they're going to leave. I think my opinion is hold them over for a few months or 6 months until you can fill those positions.
That sounds worrisome. Is this unprecedented in the nuclear department to have people exit before somebody else is in place?
It's unprecedented. This whole structure goes back to about the year 2000. So in the last several transitions, they have been held over. And frankly,
why is Trump doing that?
I don't know. And I don't know whether it's him, whether he's made that decision, or whether somebody in the transition team. But, for example, they've also told all of the political ambassadors, you have to pack up and be gone tomorrow. Why? Let's make this, continuity is a big deal.
This worries you?
It does.
Another point. The National Security Council has said that they, I guess, are disappointed by Mr. Trump's team not engaging with them more. They've even gone on to say that they've prepared a series of briefing materials to bring the Trump team up to speed, but they don't have any clarity on whether the Trump team has read them or is interested in them. What's that about?
Well, I think it is a concern, and the beginning of wisdom for me is to know what you don't know and to try to find out. And again, this strike in Libya points up the fact, I mean, anything can happen. There are rumors of North Korea testing missiles. And that's why this transition is so important. And I think the president-elect has to really understand that this isn't business as usual. These decisions, a mistake in the first few months could really have serious ramifications.
Look, Mr. Trump doesn't want business as usual. He ran on sort of blowing up the model, the business model. But what I hear you saying is that if continuity is most important, you're not sure.
Particularly in the national security field.
Sure, particularly in the national security field, but you're not sure all of those boxes are being checked.
Well, I'm not, and that's a concern that I have. I mean, when I first ran for governor, I was a business guy. I'd never been in office before. I used to say the good news is I don't know what I'm doing. The bad news is I don't know what I'm doing. But governors don't have bombers and destroyers and people that are likely to come in and make trouble.
54 Democrats, I think at last count, have decided to sit out the inauguration tomorrow. They are doing it for a variety of reasons. They haven't liked what Mr. Trump has said about John Lewis, for one, and other reasons. How are Democrats going to work with this new administration? Are they going to compromise, or are they going to obstruct?
I think that's an open question. My sense is that they're going to agree when they can and disagree when they don't. For example, my personal feeling as an independent, I was very fired up when I heard Donald Trump talk about negotiating for lower drug prices. That's something I've been advocating for 3 years. A lot of people have been talking about that. I'll be very interested to see how that idea goes over with his colleagues in the House and the Senate, because they've always resisted that. So to me, it's going to, for me, I can't speak for the Democrats, I'm going to go issue by issue. Where I agree, I'll agree, and where I don't, I won't.
But I mean, on big issues such as, say, health care or the Affordable Care Act, if the Republicans start to repeal it, we've heard some Democrats say, game over, all bets are off, then we're not going to try to compromise after that.
Well, I think one of the problems is on the Affordable Care Act, they got literally the cart before the horse. Repeal before replace. It's like you have a big apartment building, you say to everyone, we're going to move you out. But the first thing we're going to do is tear the building down. Then we'll tell you about where it's going to go and how big it's going to be and what the rooms are going to look like. That doesn't make sense to me. Let's see what the replacement looks like. And I've been saying, many of us have been saying for years, there are plenty of flaws in the Affordable Care Act that can be fixed. Let's fix them. Call it Trump care. I don't care what you call it. But let's provide health insurance to people. But don't start with repeal.
How about King Care? That has a nice ring to it.
Oh, it does.
Senator, thanks so much. Great to see you. Thanks for being here on New Day. It's another contentious confirmation.